Renault, they're such an annoying car company. Because on the one hand, they give us the dreary mediocrity of things like the Capture, the Arcana, and the Austral, all kind of crossover SUV type of things. I mean, where's the innovation in those? I mean, the original Espace, which by the way is now a large SUV that we don't even get in the UK anymore, thankfully. You know, and where's the sort of like things like the Clio V6 and the Renault Sport Spider? They don't even build a Renault Sport Clio anymore. So on the one hand, I get really frustrated with Renault because of not doing things like that. But on the other hand, when it comes to their EVs, they're knocking it out the park. I mean, the Zoe is now 10 years old and it's still a really good small EV. The Renault Megane, the new Megane E-Tech, a phenomenally good car. Not only is it sort of like the best in class in our opinion, but in 2022, it walked away with 3 of the AutoEV awards, including the Viewer's Choice and the overall car of the year. And we know what's coming out soon. They're reinvigorating the Renault 4 and the Renault 5, which just has all of us in the AutoEV office salivating in the mouth at the prospect of these funky new small EVs. Well, now they're reviving another old nameplate, and I think this one could be one to watch as well. And that nameplate that's returning from the past is Scenic, which is going to be part of Renault's rather cheesily titled Renaulution. Where's this one going to fall? Mediocrity or Marvel? Welcome to this week's edition of Sneak Peeks. Welcome to the new Renault Scenic, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we crack on with this week's edition of Sneak Peeks, and of course the new Renault Scenic E-Tech, it is of course that time we're going to ask you to make sure that you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because then you'll be notified if when our next video goes live and is uploaded. Once you've watched it, if you do enjoy it, please make sure you give it a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget, leave us your comments down below. Let us know what your thoughts are on the cars that we review, such as Renault's new Scenic E-Tech, and of course on the AutoEV channel as a whole. So the Scenic name, well, it has quite a lot of history, especially with Renault. And it did back in the 1990s for the small MPVs what its bigger brother, the Espace, did back in the 1980s for the larger MPVs. It was almost the sort of like the ideal sort of family car. And whilst there wasn't a huge amount of innovation in some respects as the Scenic moved on through its gestation, there was an element of it that appealed to families because it was a practical, usable car. Now, of course, building big and wacky cars like the Avantime and the Velsatis is all very well and good, but if nobody's buying them, then it's not really to do the company any good because they won't be making any money. So it's a fine line to tread between being sort of like innovative and stylish and being, dare I suggest, dreary everyday sort of usability. And Renault seem to have done that quite well with a lot of the models up until now. But as I say, some of the models have just been a little bit meh. The Scenic's hoping to address that, and as I say, it's part of what Renault call the Renaulution as they move into sort of like an electrified world. And as I say, we're massive fans of the Megane E-Tech. So how's this one going to fare? Is it going to be as fruity and delectable as a fruity Beaujolais, or is it going to be as welcome as a ripe old camembert that's been left out in the sun? Well, time to take a deeper dive and find out. So of course, we're going to start with styling. Now, as I say, the Scenic has sort of, what it used to be sort of like a small MPV, it's now taking on the sort of like the small crossover / SUV that's obviously very popular with families. I mean, that is what people are buying these days. Like they used to buy the small MPVs back in the 90s. Now it's these small family crossovers. But there's still a lot of innovation in the car, especially when it comes to being a family car. But we'll get on to that later. I want to talk more about the styling of it. So in terms of its physical size, what you need to think about is cars such as Kia Niro, Tesla Model Y, Volkswagen ID.5, that sort of size of car. That's the sort of where it is. So it's slightly bigger, obviously, than the Megane, which is a C-sector hatchback. You can tell that it is part of the Renault family, like the Megane, but of course it has its own distinctive looks. You still get the sort of like the DRLs that you get on the Megane, but they're now just this bit down here. They don't kind of flow into there. You get some really nice swept-back, sleek LED headlamps. This is a really interesting section here where you've got the kind of, obviously you don't have a grille, where you have cooling down at the bottom. You don't have a grille, but what Renault have done is they've made the rhombus symbol of Renault, the diamond, the sort of feature across the front, and it sort of like comes in and out of it as the light hits it in different angles, and it looks really distinctive. Of course, you get your big bold kind of Renault badge at the middle there, which isn't the charging flap, obviously, like we saw on the Megane, like it used to be on the Zoe. That's elsewhere. As I say, nice sleek headlamps, nice kind of signature DRLs down at the bottom. You got a lot of sort of like cooling, all the cooling's done right down at the bottom there, and then this nice front splitter. And there's some nice kind of texturized kind of panels here, just again, just to give it a little bit of visual interest. From the front, as I say, you can tell it's now part of the new Renault family. But as I say, it carries its own style away from the Megane. Now, as we move around the side, you'll start to see sort of like the size of the car. So, 4 metres long, there or thereabouts, same as a Kia Niro, but wheelbase of just under 3 metres long. And that's achieved by pushing the wheels right out to the far end of the car, a bit like they did with the Megane. Now, this sits on the CMF EV platform, which is shared with, obviously, Renault's technical partner, Nissan, as well. So it sits on that bespoke electrified platform. There is some interesting airflow at the front. You've got some small air curtains that just at the front there that will then take the airflow around these lovely big alloy wheels. Now, final UK specifications have yet to be decided on, but maybe start thinking there's going to be a couple of trim levels, maybe sort of like 19-inch wheels as a start, up to 20s, that sort of thing. But as I say, you get a really sort of like nice bit of airflow along a sort of like a very clean and uncluttered side profile. There's not a huge amount like Megane to sort of like be fussy about in this, but it does have a lot of interesting sort of like design features. You've got a little kind of crease just at the top of that wing that then just flows into the door and disappears. Flush door handles. These kind of textured sort of like, you know, sort of like plastic rubber cell sections at the bottom, obviously, that will help protect the doors if you're opening against sort of like side of the curbs. And again, just the shape of it looks like it gives a bit of visual interest. You get this nice sweeping window line that goes up here and then into this sort of like a large rear kind of boot spoiler. Ubiquitous black wheel arch extensions across it, and then of course your anodized integrated roof rails. So it's a handsome car. Nobody's not going to sort of like look at it and think it's boring. It's not. What I would say is it's strong, square-jawed, purposeful, if lacking a tiny little bit of visual teasement. Now, we move around the back, and there's a couple of little quite interesting features, I think, here. There's this airflow, this section here, this bumper, is quite interesting. This kind of like sticks out slightly. That's quite nice, quite distinctive, I think. These rear light sections, I really do like these. You know, sort of like the way they kind of arrow in and they go across into the boot lid as well. And then you've got the nice kind of big bold kind of Renault rhombus there, and then just the Scenic badge across the back. Uncluttered, unfussy. I really do like the rear end of the car as well. Obviously, you've got the practicality of having the rear wiper. As I say, big roof spoiler here that sort of like aids the airflow across the back of the car. And again, nice big practical back end bumper. Right, what do we think? Okay, well look, as I say, it's not exactly going to set your pulses racing, but in terms of how the car looks, it's not going to frighten many people away. I think it's quite a handsome, square-jawed type of car. I think the Megane really set the stall out for Renault's new design with that kind of really kind of squat, purposeful look about it. And that's a real standout car against things like the ID3, the MG4, the new Vauxhall Astra and Peugeot 308. Whereas the Scenic's maybe just a little bit more, and I use the term loosely, generic in terms of the class of car, but it is a handsome looking car. I like the new front end design that Renault have got going on. I like what they've done with that kind of grille section. But what I think is maybe a little bit immaterial. After all, you may be the ones that are buying it. What do you think? As always, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, whilst it might not be as unique as the original Scenic in terms of being practical, it most certainly is. The boot opens up to reveal a space of 545 litres, which is, well, ample, and it's really, really deep. The only thing I will say is it's quite a drop across this sill. You've got to sort of like lift things in and out, but in terms of the space, it's absolutely huge. Now, you get a standard 40-20-40 split rear seat, and if you fold those down, that will take the total capacity up to 1,670 litres. So that is pretty decent. To give you some idea, a Kia Niro is 475 litres in terms of boot space, so it's ably bigger than that. Not quite as big as something like a Skoda Enyaq, so it's somewhere in between the two, but as I say, in terms of the actual space itself, it's a nice square space and very, very deep. You get a huge amount of underfloor storage as well in the car. Now there's nothing up at the front, there's no storage up at the front because the motor is up there. So what Renault have done is keep all the sort of like, you know, the drivetrain up to the front, batteries underneath, and then you leave all the space for everything behind, sort of like the motor. So that's why you get this huge amount of space. There's some nice little kind of touches. You get your usual kind of ubiquitous sort of like hooks on the side to hang things from, and there's some sort of tie down lashing points as well, and obviously a light there, and you get the rigid parcel shelf. But there's nothing too sort of like innovative here, you know, in terms of sort of, you know, false floors or floor dividers or things like that maybe sort of come on some cars. And the Skoda Enyaq's one of those cars that tends to be quite kind of, has a few little nice little touches in the back of it. But in terms of space, good usable amount for a family, I would suggest. Now, rear seat space. Well, as you'd expect for a car with this length of wheelbase, it is vast. There is a huge amount of room back here, and not only is there a massive amount of room, it's really very comfortable. The seats are very easily kind of sculpted to take a full-size adult. Now even the centre section is quite kind of flat, so 3 people across really shouldn't be a problem, and you do have a completely flat floor across as well. There's plenty of headroom. As you know, I'm not exactly a tall man, but what's going to be interesting, we're going to talk about this panoramic glass sunroof a little bit later, and we're sitting in the front of the car. This is standard, or going to be standard when the cars come to the UK. And the reason that it's quite innovative is because it can change in terms of going opaque or clear. So rather than having a blind across, which eats into the roof space by quite a bit, you've got this very, very clever piece of glass. But as I say, we will talk about that a little bit later. Isofix points, very, very easy to get to as well, so they're nice, they're just covered there, so they're easy to get sort of like a child seat into, no problem at all. The doors open to, you know, a good angle, so again, getting if you've got a larger style of child seat, to get that in is pretty decent. Now, what's quite good in terms of what it has is this centre armrest here, which is just like a normal everyday armrest, but as the father of a 9-year-old on longer trips, we all know that they do love their gadgets with them. So as well as having this sort of like the 2 cup holders here and a fold up bit of storage, these cup holders do something a little bit trick. So they turn round. So what you can do is if they're using, say, like a mobile, they can have their mobile stuck like that. If they've got 2 of them kind of watching their YouTube or whatever. But then if you put them both together, it will also take an iPad. So effectively you can have a rear screen in the car for the kids. And then of course there's 2 USB-C charging ports that are down there, so you can still power it off. That's the type of thing that I think is quite clever for a family car. That's somebody's really thinking about things. And I think that is a very well thought out piece of design. So there we go. In terms of the other storage, well, of course you get your door bins as well, which are nice because they're lined with carpet, so things don't tend to rattle round. And then, as I say, you've got your nice kind of mat pockets in the front there. But yeah, this is a really, really well thought out rear cabin for a family car, and there's plenty of space for most families' needs. Now up front, again, the style follows very similar to the Megane, where you have this 12-inch driver's display behind the steering wheel, and then this 12.3-inch portrait screen. Now I know there was a lot of comments before when the Megane was first shown, sort of like the left-hand drive cars, they got this taller screen, and in the UK cars didn't get it. I'm led to believe the Scenic is getting this big 12.3-inch portrait screen, so that is going to be on the UK cars, despite the fact I'm sitting in a left-hand drive car here. So hopefully that should appease you. Right, so first of all, what are we looking at? Right, well, as I say, driver information display very nicely in front of you. When you sat here, you've got a good driving position, a sort of almost kind of quartic style, you know, steering wheel with a kind of flat top and bottom where you can steer through it. A nice view, crisp view of the instrumentation display. The infotainment system developed alongside Google, so it's a Google operating system, and that's good in 2 or 3 different ways. The first way is voice activation is excellent, so the Google Assistant is superb and very, very easy to use. When I've used it on cars before, such as the Megane or the Polestar, which has it as well, it is one of the best voice recognition systems out there, so I really do applaud them for going to Google and helping them develop this. The other thing that it will also do is it will also interact with the car. So for instance, the sunroof that I was talking about, this panoramic roof, what they call the solar bay roof, you can, rather than touch a button, you can ask the Google Assistant to make it opaque or make it clear. So that's another thing. The other really interesting thing with it that I thought was an incredible piece of tech is that it will use the Google Weather app to determine where the car is and the weather that's coming. So for instance, if you're driving along in kind of windy conditions and you're driving into a headwind, it will then adjust the range accordingly, taking that weather into account, which I think is brilliant. So your predicted range here will change depending on what Google Weather say the weather that you're driving through is like. Phenomenal. The screen itself is clean, clear and crisp, and it's very, very easy, so like within easy reach. So you've obviously got your app store there. You can go up and down, you can change things kind of around where you want them. Obviously you've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, as you'd expect. There are some physical buttons below it here, so although yes, you have the climate control, which is on the base of the screen here, which seems to stay permanently on, which is nice, but there are physical buttons to adjust it, so that is effectively just the display. So your temperature control adjusting by the kind of toggle switches here, fan speed, airflow for windscreen and rear, heated rear window, automatic, climate, your air recirculation, and then your distribution flow there. So although, as I say, it looks like you've got it here, it's not actually on the screen, it's on the toggle switch that's below that. That's just giving you the readout. The graphics themselves, really very good. They're interesting, they're different to look at, they just seem to be a bit more kind of lifelike and things that we've come to expect, you know, from sort of like mobile phones and tablets nowadays, even your television. So the font that's used and I say the graphics itself all look really very good. And then of course you've got some physical buttons on the steering wheel as well, so you know, kind of volume control, your cruise control buttons here, and this one here for multi-sense, which I'll talk about in just a second. Wireless charging pad here, and then there's tons of storage at the front, which you can take the dividers out and change it round depending obviously on how much you need or don't need. And then you've got this centre armrest, he says, pushing it back with a cubby in there, a little tray at the front there for your mobile. There's more storage there. Is there a glove box? Yeah, there's a glove box there, you can get your gloves in as well. So really excellent storage for the car. There's also a third ISOFIX point in the front passenger seat as well, so that's also very good. Right, let me talk about this roof for a second, because this is called Solar Bay. Okay, so what it basically does is it goes clear or opaque at the sort of like the touch of a button, but that's not kind of new. But what it does is it does it in sections. So for instance, if you want a clear section at the front, almost like a sunroof, and then the rear to be opaque, you can have that. Or you can take it all the way back and it's all clear. Or you can swap it around, so it's the rear that's clear and the front is opaque. I mean, it's very, very clever. And as I say, it reduces the need for a roller blind, and which eats into headroom. And obviously, it also means you don't need to then have a motor as well. So the complexity is reduced. The other interesting thing with this car is sustainability. And this glass roof is made from recyclable. I think it's 50% of it's made from recycled glass, and 90% of it is then able to be recycled in its own. And that's the same with the rest of the cabin. You can see, sort of like, although the materials are very, very nice, this kind of wool blend that you've got on the pillars and then up into the sort of like the ceiling round about the roof, it's all recycled materials. There's a huge sustainability message that Renault have got going on. And the amount that the car can be recycled from, I think it's 24% of the materials used in the whole car are from recycled materials. And as I say, about 90% of the car itself, of the car's mass, is then able to be recycled at its end of life. And I think that's a hugely important message moving forward, as I say, especially for younger buyers. Connectivity and sustainability are the two key words that younger buyers do seem to be talking about these days. And this car has it in bundles, so well done Renault for that. Okay, practicality side as well, you've got a nice driving position, the seats, you know, they've got enough lateral support. Obviously we're going to have to wait till we drive it, till we tell you how it actually feels out on the road. The usual kind of McGann thing, complaint that I had before, however, you've got your transmission stock up here, then your wiper stock, then a separate audio control there. So you've got 3 column stocks down sort of like the right hand side of the steering wheel, and then just one on the left. It just seems a little bit fussy. I'm wondering whether they should have put the transmission lever maybe on buttons on this spare space here or something, but you know, that's my only real complaint about that. Now, multi-sense. This is effectively your driving modes, but it's more than just driving modes. It's more than just eco, normal and sport. When you press it, not only does it change the characteristics of the drive line, but it also changes the characteristics of your comfort in the interior. So the interior lighting, even such things such as the temperature, you know, and the seat comfort, it can change all of those depending obviously on which one you choose. So it's much more than just driving modes, and that's why Renault have called it multi-sense. It's designed to kind of, dare I suggest, maybe suit your kind of mood a little bit better. So if you're kind of in a sportier mood, there you go, multi-sense has changed there. All of a sudden the ambient lighting goes a bit red, all the graphics slightly change, you know, maybe a little bit more kind of sportier look to it. Or you go back to comfort, there's a much more kind of serene feel to sort of like the interior of the car. And then you've got, what's the other one here? You've got eco. Well, obviously it just kind of dulls everything down. Everything starts to glow a bit more green. So yeah, so it's a little bit more than just driving modes as well. So that's one thing to take into account. On the whole, however, a really well thought out cabin. I love the way this is kind of wrapped around the driver. I love the kind of graphics on the screen. The fact that it uses Google Assistant is phenomenal as far as I'm concerned. There's a huge amount of storage in the car. We'd anticipate there being a very good amount of comfort given how well we feel that Renault do with their comfort in terms of the Megane and the Zoe that's gone before. But the other big important thing for me is that sustainability message and sort of the use of innovative materials, especially with something like that solar bay roof. It's to be applauded. So yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting car when it hits the market. Oh, and you know how with BMW they've got Hans Zimmer to do all sort of like the noises and the electronic sounds that the BMWs make? Well, Renault have gone for French composer Jean-Michel Jarre. So he does all the sort of like the sounds, the electronic noises that the car makes. Which makes me wonder, is the new Mini going to play Land of Hope and Glory when you start and stop it? Maybe Tesla might have dueling banjos. Now, at the moment, UK specifications have yet to be confirmed, but so far the Scenic has been launched with 2 battery options. There's a 60 kilowatt hour one available, which has a range of up to 260 miles on the WLTP scale, and also an 87 kilowatt hour one, which increases that potential range up to 385 miles on the WLTP scale. Now, of course, these have yet to be confirmed for UK cars or not, but it certainly is very, very class competitive in terms of battery size and obviously in terms of its mileage and range capability. Charging speeds are up to 150 kilowatts. And of course, we're still waiting to get those sort of like charging times, but I'm sure you can guess that your usual sort of like 10 to 80% is going to be around about half an hour using that 150 kilowatt charger. Your charging flap's located down on the side of the car, as I say, rather than on the front. So do be aware of that. You don't just pull into the bay like you used to with the Renault Zoe. But what's also very interesting with the car is there's some very, very clever thermal management that's going on to the car. In terms of its battery, the way that the batteries behaved. And of course, Renault have got huge experience when it comes to batteries. I mean, they've been building the Zoe for over 10 years now. So all of this is being able to sort of like be engineered into making the car much more efficient and keeping a good steady charging curve through its time. Now, depending obviously on what final UK specifications are confirmed, potentially you could be looking at 2 motors, depending obviously on the battery size. So the smaller battery is teamed up with a 170 brake horsepower motor, and the larger 87 kilowatt hour battery gets a 220 brake horsepower motor, both mounted at the front, so just single motor cars. Performance stats, well, obviously this sort of power, this sort of size, you maybe be looking somewhere between sort of like say 7.5 to 9.5 seconds 0 to 60 sprint, obviously depending on what motor, whether we get both or whether we get either or whatever happens in the UK cars. And in terms of obviously how the car is going to drive, well, of course, that's going to have to wait until we subject it to a full AutoEV road test. But given what Renault did with the Megane and how impressed we were with that, if they can pull off the same trick with the larger Scenic, it's going to be an impressive car to drive, I suggest. And again, no official pricing as yet confirmed, but it's a bigger car than the Megane, so I think you can expect prices to start above the Megane. If we were maybe to start thinking maybe early 40,000s, maybe to sort of somewhere in the mid 40s, that's where I would anticipate this sort of car fitting into the marketplace. So as I say, we yet to get final confirmation of prices, but I would think we're probably safe on betting in somewhere in that sort of region. So obviously with the size and this projected price of car, the competition is plentiful. I mean, throw a stone into any Tesco's car park, you'll probably hit one of the competitors for this car. So what else might you be looking at? Well, of course, you might be looking at a car very similar in size, such as the Kia Niro EV. And of course, if you're looking at that, you might also be looking at maybe a base spec EV6. Obviously depending on where this ends up pricing wise, because that's sort of like it starts with the kind of Niro takes off. So Niro and EV6, potentially two rivals from Kia there. And then, of course, you've got things such as the Volkswagen group with things like the Volkswagen ID4 and ID5 twins, Skoda's Enyaq, Audi's Q4 e-tron. Those are big cars to maybe contend with as well. And then we're also going to see new cars come through from Stellantis group, you know, the old firm rivalry of Peugeot and Renault and things like that, because Peugeot are about to launch the E3008 as well, which is a car that's going to go into this market space. You can't ignore the fact that Tesla have pulled a blinder in reducing the prices of the Model Y, and again, that car now starts at sort of the mid-40s in a single motor guise, sorry. So that's going to be a competitor car for this, and of course, it's a huge seller as well. Ford are going to soon enter this market space with the new Explorer, so that's a contender as well. And I don't bet that there's going to be plenty more. And of course, you've got things such as BMW's iX1. They started at the £50,000 bracket, but now they're introducing lower spec ones. So again, that could be a competitor. Volvo with the XC40 and C40 recharges, and Mercedes-Benz with the EQA. So there's certainly no shortage of competition if you're looking for a 5-door, 5-seat, all-electric family crossover. So, in terms of Renault providing a 5-door, 5-seat SUV/crossover style car for the family these days with an all-electric drivetrain, on first acquaintance, the Scenic seems to be hitting the mark. Now, bear in mind, as I say, Renault's experience when it comes to electric cars is vast. There's now over 250,000 Zoe's been built over the last 10 years. So they've got a huge amount of technical know-how and data to know how batteries perform and know what people want from their electric cars that they can use to develop their next generation of cars. Now, we might bemoan the fact that, you know, sort of like some of the revolution has been lost within the Renaulution, but that's going to be the job for the new Renault 4 and the Renault 5, the small hatchbacks, the little quirky, little classy style hatchbacks that they're going to be bringing out. The Scenic has a much clearer objective, and that is to be a very likeable, practical family car with a very commendable sustainability message. And certainly on my acquaintance here today, I think that's exactly what they've managed to achieve. Now, it's going to take a full AutoEV road test before we can give you the final definitive verdict, but in what is a very competitive class, I wouldn't be surprised if the Scenic isn't vying for top honours. Thank you for watching yet another episode of AutoEV. As always, please remember to make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, and then once you've done that, press the bell button down below, because in that way you get a notification when our next video is uploaded and it goes live. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave us your comments down below. Let us know what your thoughts are on the cars we review, such as the new Renault Scenic. What do you think of it? We should have done an MPV. Do you think they've hit the right market space with this type of car? Do you like the style of it? Have you got a Renault? What's your experiences with them? As always, let us know in the comments down below. Now remember, we're also across all social media platforms as well. So Facebook, X, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. So please give us a follow there as well, because every little bit does help us. And if this has just whetted your appetite, maybe this is the first time you've tuned into AutoEV and you want to know more about us, then stick on the YouTube channel, because there's not just sneak peeks, but full road tests, twin tests, used car buying advice, motorbike reviews, van reviews, even some classic electric icons, just for your viewing pleasure. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.